ladybugs. How's everybody doing tonight? I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you guys are all having a great evening. I know I'm doing pretty good. I mean, I'm still not feeling very good, but I'm surviving. So that's what matters. So today I wanted to talk about the topic of bullying because I've seen it happen in our community, but I've seen it happen in a lot of communities. So while we're dressing babies, I think we're going to discuss that because I have some takes on bullying that are, I don't know if they're, so one of the issues that I have in my life is that I'm not great at beating around the bush. You know what I mean? If I think something or I have something to say, I will just blatantly say it. And sometimes that works for me and sometimes it doesn't. A lot of people don't like the brash truth. But it's what you're going to get from me because that's just how I am. Ever since my stroke, I don't have the ability to filter a lot of what I say, even though I try to. So let's talk about bullying. So one of the things that I've noticed in the community in not just our community, but in all communities, is that people do a lot of putting down of other people. And here's what I think about that. I think that some people bully others because, no, go lay down, Tiny, because it makes them somehow feel better about themselves. It's kind of like the little kid at school who gets caught writing on the desk and he's like, but he did it too. It somehow it makes us feel less guilty and it makes us feel better about ourselves to throw other people under the bus. I don't really understand that line of thinking, but it apparently does. So I think that's what is behind a lot of bullying. I think that mainly it's people who feel badly about themselves, and in order to feel better about themselves, they put down somebody else or they throw somebody else under the bus because it somehow makes them feel better about themselves. And that's what I think is behind most bullying in situations. I don't think it's an attempt, although it could be for some people, to just be a blatant attempt to be mean. I think that the majority of people who bully others do so because, Evie, go lay down, because they feel badly about themselves and it somehow makes them feel better to attack other people. Joey, move. Come on, move. So that's what I think about bullying. I also think that people justify their own actions by bullying. Like if you've done something wrong or someone accuses you of doing something wrong, one of the ways that we respond as human beings is to attack the other person. I think that one of the problems we have in today's society is that people have a real hard time admitting when they're wrong. And here's the thing about being wrong. We are all wrong sometimes. That's just a fact. You know, we're humans, we're imperfect creatures, we are not God, and we are often wrong. And we're going to be wrong from time to time. Nothing is going to change that. And I think it's a lot of people have difficulty admitting when they're wrong. And so I think that part of the problem with bullying is that if you accuse somebody of doing something wrong or you suggest that somebody has done something wrong, their natural response to you is to find out what you've done wrong because it makes them feel like whatever they did wrong is less wrong. And here's the thing about that. You pointing out that Johnny wrote on his desk as well doesn't change the fact that you wrote on your desk. You know what I mean? It doesn't take away your wrongness. It just makes your wrongness more common. I think as people, as human beings, we need to become more comfortable with the idea that we can do something wrong, that we can be wrong, and that there's nothing wrong with being wrong. You know, we are all humans. We all make mistakes. And I see it as a sign of character and integrity when someone can say, you know what? Yeah, I did that. I screwed up. It was wrong. That's just, I'm sorry. I won't do it again. As opposed to defending themselves and becoming defensive, which is what a lot of people do. But I think in today's world, it's very difficult for people to admit they've done something wrong. And I don't know why that is, because I feel like one of the best things about being wrong is that you can then learn from it and fix it for the future. So I don't necessarily see being wrong as much as I see it as a chance for growth and a chance for self improvement. But I've seen a lot, not a lot, I won't say I've seen a lot, but I've seen some bullying going on with the Reborn community. And I'm not sure what's behind that. I think that in general, as a general rule, people who get into Reborns do tend to suffer from forms of mental illness. And that's not an absolute, obviously. Not everybody who's into Reborn suffers from mental illness. But if you look at the purpose that Reborns serve, it makes sense that the people who are into it would have a higher rate of mental illness than another group. So for example, because Reborns help with stress, Reborns help with anxiety, Reborns help with depression, they help with loss and grief. And so you can expect that people dealing with those issues might have, depression, anxiety, those kinds of things. So while I'm not saying that everybody in the Reborn community suffers from mental illness, well, I mean, I'm not sure there's anybody out there today who doesn't suffer from some form of mental illness, depression, anxiety, all those things, bipolar. They're all very, very much more common today than they used to be. And I think that's a mixture of the stress that we live with, which is much higher than stress in the past, as far as like money and, housing and, but also, I think that, just this culture that we have of instant gratification is also to blame for that, because now having to wait for something causes great stress for people. Having to not get what you want right at this moment causes great stress for a lot of people. I think that there are some of us who choose not to live in the instant gratification world. For example, I almost never eat out. I can count on one hand the amount of times in the last 12 months my family has eaten out. We cook everything, and I think yes, that's a very small thing, but it's those small things that make a difference in today's world. There is Nayani. Having to wait for anything makes you just better at waiting, because these days people don't have to wait for anything. You know what I mean? They get it now, and they get it the way they want it. It's like life has become a Burger King. You get it your way when you want it all the time. And I don't think that that does anything good for our young people. I think that our young people are getting far too accustomed to getting what they want when they want it. And so when they can't have what they want when they want it, it's very unsettling for them. They don't know how to be patient. They don't know how to wait for something. And that's just a fact of the younger generation. And that's not in any way to insult the younger generation. I think it's the way they were raised. I think every generation has had it slightly harder than the generation before as far as stress. And let's just be honest, the economics of today are not great. The cost of living is so high. The cost of food is so high. And the reality is that jobs will never rise to equal inflation, and that causes great stress on people. And I don't blame people for having great stress because of that. I think that that's a terrible reality of our society. If inflation goes up 17%, then jobs should go up 17%, pay should go up 17%, not 4%, which is what's been happening for years and years and years. And it makes the gap between wages and the cost of living just get greater and greater and greater. And that puts more and more stress on people. Not to mention the fact that we are eating so much chemicals and so much processed food in our days that many women are suffering infertility, which is causing them to, be more depressed about those kinds of issues. Relationships are not holding together like they used to in generations past. And that causes stress. So I think there's a lot of things to say are very stressful about our society. And there's even less and less resources available to deal with that stress. You know what I mean? Like mental health resources used to be much more prevalent and much more easily accessible than they are now. They've actually gotten less accessible. And that's because of finances. The reality is people, want to say that it's not always about money, but the reality is that money buys you resources that you couldn't otherwise afford. You know, when you have money, when you have lots of money, you can pretty much get any resource you want. But when you don't have money, those resources are oftentimes well out of reach, and that's very difficult. So, you know, that's one of the things about bullying that I think is a factor is the stress that we all live under and the inability to access proper resources as far as mental health resources. So that's definitely a factor in bullying. But another factor is that in our society, we have basically, hang on one second. I have a gourd that I just realized that I used for Halloween last year, and I didn't think gourds rotted, but apparently they do. And I noticed the bottom of the gourd is a little bit rotten, so I want to throw it out. I Sitting here looking at it is driving me crazy, so give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. I actually thought that gourds like dried out and then the seeds you can hear them inside because I've seen some like that. I didn't know gourds rotted, but guess what? Newsflash, gourds rot. So as I was saying, I think the amount of stress that we have to deal with as adults in today's world and even as kids is gotten much more intense. And financial stress has gotten much more intense. There's Taylor. Family stress has gotten much more intense. So all of those are factors that contribute to bullying. The more stress people have, the more likely they are to bully others. There is, however, just this attitude in today's world that if you stop it, if you point out something somebody else has done wrong, it takes away your wrongness, and that's just not true. Somebody else doing the same thing wrong that I do, if I point that out, that doesn't change the fact that I still did it wrong. I'll give you an example. So years ago, I had a friend who cheated on her husband. And when asked about it, she routinely said, well, he made me do it because he didn't pay attention to me, or he wasn't a good husband, or he wasn't a good partner, or whatever the case is. And what I said about that was that his behavior may influence feelings that you have, but his behavior is not a cause for your behavior. If you make a promise to someone that you're going to honor, love, be faithful, all of that stuff, and you decide to cheat, then that's on you. When people hear that you've cheated, they don't think about his integrity. They don't think about his word being good. They don't think about his honesty. They think about yours. And that's where people get screwed up in today's world, because they automatically think that if they can blame somebody else, then it takes away their wrongdoing. And that's just not the way it works. We're going to address Morgan next. I am a big, huge fan of holding on to your word and your integrity, because I feel like while we may have money right now, you may have a nice house or a nice car, any of that stuff, that is not something that you have control over losing. For example, a flood could come and wipe out your house. You know, a thief could come and steal your car. Those are not things that you have control over keeping. But you do have, the only thing you have complete control over is your word, your integrity. And if you give it, once you give that up, it's really hard to get back. It's like I was talking in another video about scammers, and I was saying that I worked for years to gain the reputation that I have in the Reborn community. And that I wouldn't give that up for a doll. It's the same way with integrity, you know. I have worked for years to maintain my image and get my name as someone who's trusted and can be confided in this community. And I feel the same way about my integrity. At the end of the day, the only thing I have that I have any true control over is my integrity, my word, and my name. And even if people make false claims about you, bringing your integrity into question, if you have integrity, then nothing anybody else can say will take that away from you. You know what I mean? Because you can weather that storm. I've had people call me a scammer when they've scammed me. And at the end, did it cause a little stress in my life? Sure. But at the end of the day, nobody who knew me as a person believed it, because they know that I am someone who is honest to my word, that I have integrity. And I know that that's one of the reasons you want to hang on to your integrity in the world, is because if times become hard, if someone tries to make up something about you, people need to know that you are an honest person who has great integrity. And then if that's true, they won't believe what other people say about you. You understand what I'm saying? Giving up your word, your name, and your integrity is one of the biggest mistakes that people make. Because once that's gone, getting it back, it can take one sentence to blow up your integrity, but it'll take 1,000,000 to get it back. That's just the way the world works. It may not be fair, but that's the way the world works. So even if you make a mistake and you lie once, or you scam somebody once you've given up your integrity, so many other things become harder in your life, you know? Oh, she looks so cute. Look. And so there's Miss Morgan. Look at Morgan. Doesn't she look pretty? Oh, she does. She looks so cute. And that's just a fact. So you really want to hang on to your name and your integrity. It's really important. And going back to bullying, here's a few things I want to share with you guys about bullying. Yes, sometimes, and we don't want to admit this as human beings. Sometimes we try not to admit this, but sometimes it can feel good to hurt somebody else. Hurt people hurt people. So if you're a person who's been hurt, you're more likely to hurt others. And not that you're guaranteed, just more likely, because hurt people hurt people. But the reality is that for every one time you hear a negative statement about you, it takes around 5,000 positive statements to wipe out that one negative statement. But if you have 5,000 positive statements said about you, they can easily be wiped out by one negative statement. And that's important to remember when we think about, when we think about how our interactions with other people affect them. I know it's like a clown car, they just keep coming out from under the bed. If you say something nasty to someone, you have to remember that it will take 5,000 positive statements to get rid of that one nasty statement in that person's mind. And that's a sad commentary, but it's true. And it leaves all of us with a much higher level of responsibility. We have a level of responsibility to know that we are not going to hurt people. And when you think about it, every time you've said something nasty to someone, think about the fact that it takes 5,000 positive comments to counteract that one negative one. I'm going to put this on her, I think, because I haven't used this for a long time. Isn't this cute? This is a Disney dress. It's Bambi. See, where's the Bambi? There's Thumper right there. I don't know if that's Thumper. That might be the girl bunny. I don't remember the girl bunny's name. But anyway, it's a Disney dress. It's Bambi. So, think about that. Every time you say something negative to someone, it takes 5,000 positive comments to wipe out that one negative comment from their minds. And if someone hears 5,000 positive comments, it can be wiped out with one negative comment. I think when we realize the scope of what negativity does to people, it makes it harder to be negative with people and to say things that are nasty. Negativity can deeply, even one comment can deeply affect and wither somebody's self-esteem. Saying somebody's nasty, or that they're mean, or that they're evil, or that any of that can drastically affect the self-esteem of another person. And we need to not only be aware of that fact, but to be careful that we're choosing our words wisely. Here's the thing. There is never a reason, never, to put somebody down. And it's always important with children, I want to point this out, to talk about their behavior and not them as people. I made it a habit to tell my kids, I don't like this behavior. Not that I don't like you. This behavior is bad behavior. But I never called them bad kids, and I always made that a point to that distinction between the two. It's important with your kids to discipline them. It's important to to call out bad behavior, but it's equally as important to point out that it's the behavior that's undesirable and not the person. You know, your children are people, and when they hear bad things about themselves, it sticks with them. So it's really important when you discipline your kids to make the distinction between you as a person and you, the behavior you choose to engage in. And it's really important to make that distinction to kids so they know that it's not them you're unhappy with, it's the behavior. It will go a long way to helping their self-esteem, you know? Always try to make the distinction. I don't like this behavior. You know, I don't like the choices that you've made, or the choices that you made make me angry or disappointed. But it's never okay to say to a child, I'm disappointed in you, because the way that the child will perceive that is you're disappointed in them as people. When really what you mean most of the time is, I'm disappointed in this behavior. I'm disappointed with the choices that you've made. And that distinction is incredibly important. So I encourage all of the mommies who watch my channel to remember when you have something to say about your kids, to make sure that you distinguish between them as individuals and their behavior. Because kids will often take it the worst possible way. Oh, there she is. She's on the sweater too. See? Right there. Right there. Isn't that cute on her? I don't know if I like her so much in orange, but it's a cute dress. I just don't know if it looks really cute on her. I think I like her in peach. So if I could give you any one piece of advice, and even when you're talking to other adults, it's important to distinguish between the person that you're dealing with and the behavior that you dislike. You know, first, back to what we were talking about, bullying is never okay. It's never okay to target somebody for constant and repetitive negative feedback, which is basically what bullying is. That's never okay, you know? My suggestion to you, if you have an issue, is to contact the person with whom you have an issue with, whether that be your children or a friend or somebody on Facebook, to ask if you can discuss the issue calmly. Always take control of your feelings, saying, I feel, not you made me feel, because that's very accusatory and it causes them to be defensive and continues the drama. It's important to say, I feel, I think, not you made me. And it's important to distinguish the fact that your feelings are yours and that you own them as an adult human. You know, it's important that we own our own feelings, because when you say you made me, not only are you putting that blame on the other person for how you feel, but you're also giving away your power. You're saying you can make me act a certain way, and that's giving up power that you have to somebody else. And that's never a good thing. You always want to retain the power for yourself. Remember, temper is the one thing you can't gain by losing it. Okay? And also with this giving up power, when you tell people you made me feel, or because you did this, I responded this way, you're giving up all of your own personal power. Hold on. Oh, Evie, what are you doing back there? Get out of there. Or Joey, get out of there. It's always important to own your feelings and own your actions. I feel this way rather than you made me feel. And it's also important to, when you talk to somebody about an issue that's going on, conflict resolution, you can say, I'm sorry. You can start out any conversation with, I'm sorry I did, and then whatever you did. And then ask them, do you feel bad about any part of this that you had? Then once you talk about it, once you've talked it out and you've come to some kind of understanding with it, let it go and tell the other person, okay, we're going to let this go and move on. Now, maybe your relationship can't survive the situation. Maybe it can. But if it can or it can't is irrelevant with this, because you need to move on for you. Forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about you. It's about you regaining control back of your life and taking the emotional hostage that your other person has for you. Don't let them live rent-free in your mind or in your heart. Once you've discussed it and you can work it out, then it's time to let it go, and let it go permanently. Nobody can stand up to the scrutiny of a million past wrongs. And what I mean by that is if you're in a relationship and you're fighting about something today and you bring up something they did last week or 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago or 10 years ago, nobody can stand up to that, no, to that kind of accusatory behavior. Nobody can. We can't stand up to what we've done our entire lives. So it's important to deal with the issue that's at hand and not deal with whatever happened in the past, you know? And then once you've dealt with it, let it go and tell the other person, I just want to let this go now. You know, let's just put it behind us and move on. And that's an important thing to do because it frees you up. It frees up your emotional list to deal with something else. And it has less chance of having an effect on situations in the future. That's just my advice on conflict resolution. I'll definitely talk more about this. I have an anonym, is that the right word? Anyway, I have a something that I use for conflict resolution. I'll share that in the next video, but I love you guys and I hope it all makes sense and I hope you have a positive day. Please do something nice for somebody else today and let somebody do something nice for you. If you're not a religious person, you can log off now. If you are into praying, then let's do our closing prayer. Lord, I come to you humbly and ask for your mercy on my life. I thank you for your blessings. Can you help the people watching this video to have an opportunity to be able to do something really beneficial and life-changing for someone else? Present them with the opportunity to be kind, empathetic, compassionate, and creative. Allow them the opportunity to really change someone's life. It's really important that they have these experiences. Also, can you please bless their lives in the best way possible? Can you bring them good fortune and prosperity, motivation, and allow their dreams to become fuller and more near to accomplishment every day? I ask this through I ask this through your Christ our Lord, your Son, and the dog is distracting me, I'm trying. And I ask this through you. Please bring your majesty, your mercy, and your love upon everybody watching this video and show them that you hold their hearts in your hands. Allow them to lay their burdens at your feet and then wipe it away from their consciousness. I ask all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, through Christ our Lord. Amen. So I hope you guys this was a great video. I hope we had fun watching and we'll talk to you later. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, ladybugs.